A Mother's Deception, the disappearance of Caylee Anthony. The summer of 2008, Orlando, Florida. 2-year-old Caylee Anthony vanished, gone. Her mother, Casey, claimed ignorance. A kidnapping, she said. But something felt off. This was no ordinary missing child case. This was sinister. A saga of deceit, suspicion, and the agonizing search for truth. Caylee became a symbol of innocence lost. Her image, a constant reminder. A child was missing. The nation watched, waited, and prayed for Caylee's safe return. Ticking clock. A timeline unraveling. The clock was ticking. Every second that passed diminished the chances of finding Caylee alive. The investigation revealed a chilling timeline of Caylee Anthony's actions. June 16, 2008. Caylee was last seen alive with her mother, Casey. July 15, 2008. Cindy Anthony reported Caylee missing. Cindy hadn't seen Caylee for 31 days. August 11, 2008. The net tightened. Caylee Anthony was indicted on multiple charges. The stench of lies. Evidence ignored. The evidence was chilling. A stench literally emanating from Casey's car. The same car she claimed Caylee was last seen in. A foul odor, the kind associated with decomposition. Forensic experts would later testify that the smell was consistent with human remains. Duct tape, a chilling detail, was found on the car's trunk. Was this used to silence little Caylee? The prosecution believed so. Searches on the Anthony family computer revealed a horrifying discovery. Someone had searched for terms like chloroform and how to make chloroform weeks before Caylee disappeared. The prosecution argued that this was no coincidence, that it pointed directly to premeditation. Casey's own words, or lack thereof, spoke volumes. She told elaborate lies, spinning tales of kidnappings and nannies who never existed. She partied, went clubbing, seemingly unfazed by her daughter's disappearance. This was not the behavior of a grieving mother. This was the behavior of someone with something to hide. Web of Deception, a mother's inconsistent tales. Casey's stories were a tangled web of inconsistencies. She claimed Caylee was kidnapped from her backyard by the fictitious nanny, Zenaida Gonzalez. Yet no one had seen this nanny. No one could confirm her existence. She told her parents Caylee was with the nanny, that she was busy with work, that everything was fine. All lies. Fabrications designed to deflect, to buy time, to cover her tracks. Each lie, a thread that, when pulled, unraveled her carefully constructed facade a little more. Her demeanor during these fabrications was unsettling. She was calm, collected, almost rehearsed. There was a coldness in her eyes, a detachment that defied explanation. Where was the panic, the desperation of a mother whose child was missing? The digital world, a treasure trove of evidence. Caylee Anthony's computer searches painted a disturbing picture. The searches for chloroform, the visits to websites discussing decomposition, drowning. These weren't random clicks, they were deliberate actions that spoke volumes about her state of mind. Then there were the photos. Caylee partying with friends, smiling for the camera, living her life as if her daughter wasn't missing, presumed dead. These images, splashed across newspapers and television screens, shocked the nation. How could a mother whose child was missing, behave with such callous disregard? The prosecution used these digital breadcrumbs to build their case. They argued that the searches, the photos, the lies all pointed to one inescapable conclusion. Caylee Anthony was guilty of murdering her daughter. The trial began on May 24, 2011. The world watched, captivated and horrified, as the details of the case unfolded in a Florida courtroom. The prosecution presented its case methodically, laying out the evidence, highlighting the inconsistencies in Caylee's stories, and painting a picture of a calculated killer. The defense, on the other hand, argued that Caylee's death was a tragic accident, a drowning in the family pool that Caylee, panicked and afraid, tried to cover up. They painted Caylee as a troubled young woman, a victim of a dysfunctional family, but not a killer. The courtroom became a stage for a dramatic clash of narratives. Expert witnesses debated the significance of the forensic evidence. Psychologists delved into Caylee's mental state. The jury listened intently, tasked with the impossible, sifting through the lies, the half-truths, and the speculation to reach a verdict. After 6 weeks of testimony, hundreds of pieces of evidence, and hours of closing arguments, the jury reached a verdict: not guilty of first-degree murder, aggravated child abuse, and aggravated manslaughter of a child. Guilty on 4 counts of providing false information to law enforcement. The nation was stunned. How could this be? The evidence, the lies, the utter lack of remorse, it all pointed to guilt. But the jury, bound by the law, had spoken. They were not convinced beyond a reasonable doubt of Caylee Anthony's guilt on the most serious charges. The prosecution, visibly shaken, maintained that they had presented a strong case, but respected the jury's decision. The defense, triumphant, declared victory, claiming that Caylee Anthony had been wrongly accused from the start. Beyond the verdict, the lingering shadow of guilt. The verdict sent shockwaves across the nation. Protests erupted, people took to the streets, outraged by what they perceived as a grave miscarriage of justice. How could Caylee Anthony, the woman who lied, who deceived, who seemed so utterly indifferent to her daughter's fate, walk free? The answer, as unsatisfying as it may be, lies in the burden of proof. The prosecution, despite presenting a compelling case, was unable to convince the jury beyond a reasonable doubt that Caylee Anthony was responsible for Caylee's death. The lack of a definitive cause of death, the reliance on circumstantial evidence, and the defense's ability to cast doubt on the prosecution's theory all contributed to the not guilty verdict. Despite the verdict, Caylee Anthony walked out of the courtroom a free woman, but not without a shadow of guilt hanging over her. The court of public opinion had already reached its own verdict, and it was one of condemnation. A history of deceit, unmasking Caylee Anthony. To understand the public's unwavering belief in Caylee's guilt, one must delve into her past, a past marked by a pattern of deceit and manipulation. This was not a woman who shied away from lies, from twisting the truth to suit her needs. There were the small lies, the exaggerations, the fabrications told to gain attention, sympathy, or simply to get out of trouble. But there were also bigger, more calculated deceptions. Lies told to manipulate, to control, to keep her carefully constructed world from crumbling around her. This pattern of deceit, evident in her interactions with friends, family, and even law enforcement, painted a picture of a woman who was comfortable with lies, who used them as easily as others breathe air. It was this history, this ingrained tendency towards deception, that made it so difficult for people to believe her claims of innocence. Public fury, outrage, and the quest for justice. The public outrage following the verdict was palpable. People were angry, frustrated, and deeply disturbed by the outcome of the trial. They had followed the case closely, had seen the evidence, had heard the lies, and they were convinced of Caylee Anthony's guilt. The verdict sparked a national conversation about reasonable doubt, the burden of proof, and the role of the media in shaping public opinion. It also highlighted the very human need for justice, for closure, and the deep sense of unease that lingers when these needs are left unmet. In the aftermath of the trial, Caylee Anthony became one of the most hated women in America. She was demonized, vilified, and subjected to a level of public scrutiny and condemnation that few could withstand. A Mother's Reckoning, the Unanswered Questions. The Caylee Anthony case, despite its legal conclusion, remains a haunting reminder of the darkness that can lurk beneath the surface and the limitations of the justice system in addressing every question, in righting every wrong. Caylee Anthony, a bright-eyed little girl, deserves justice. She deserves to be remembered not as a victim, but as a beloved daughter, granddaughter, and friend whose life was tragically cut short. Her story, though steeped in tragedy, serves as a reminder of the importance of fighting for the vulnerable, of demanding accountability, and of never giving up hope, even in the face of unimaginable darkness. The questions surrounding Caylee's death may never be fully answered. The doubts, the suspicions, The whispers of what if will likely linger long after the media spotlight fades. But one thing remains certain: Caylee Anthony will never be forgotten. Her memory, like the haunting image of her cherubic face, will continue to serve as a powerful reminder of the fragility of life and the enduring power of truth.